I think that a lot of the songs that people heard through the years were songs that were from his heart. That was his way of getting away from the anger and the bitterness and the tough parts of childhood, and he was able to sing us his life through song.
We all have those moments where we need a little encouragement to get through our day. Someone to remind us that we are not alone. Find peace. Embrace joy. Seek God daily. Welcome to Jesus Calling, Stories of Faith. Our guest is legendary country music artist Randy Travis and his wife Mary. Randy's rise to fame included 20 studio albums, which yielded 16 #1 singles. Travis broke through in the mid-1980s with the release of his album Storms of Life, which sold more than 4 million copies. He went on to record several Christian country records as well, and his song 3 Wooden Crosses earned the 2003 CMA Song of the Year Award and a Grammy Award for Best Male Country Performance. Randy and Mary share about Randy's early years in music, his recommitment to his faith, and how they clung to God when a devastating illness threatened Randy's life.
I was speaking to y'all earlier about how I'm asked to speak for Randy, and everybody knows Randy Travis, a great American, a great country singer, and made his mark in an acting career with over 46 movies. But it all started in Nashville, North Carolina. That's where he was born and raised. 6 children in his family, and had a sweet, sweet mama that kind of developed the softer parts of their hearts. And I think if you ask any of his brothers and sisters, they'll tell you the same thing. And Daddy was a little bit rougher. He was tougher on him. It was a farming family. He raised horses and cows. Mama was kind of the moderator between Dad and the kids, and it was tough sometimes, real tough. And but I think that's where he got the soft side and the gracious side. And he had a grandmother named Grandma Gaga.
Yeah.
They named her Gaga. And Gaga lived right next door to him, there in Marshville, down the little road in Olive Branch, right?
Yep.
And Randy spent a lot of time with Gaga on the porch. Gaga would cook for him, every Sunday, but he spent a lot of time with her on the porch. And Gaga was rough. That was Daddy's mama, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And Randy said she was rough, and she'd drink her scotches every afternoon on the porch in her rocking chair, and she dipped snuff, right?
Yeah.
So he said, but he'd go over there, and Gaga would rock, and she would drink, and she would dip, and she taught me so much about life. And I think that he picked up a lot about, Gaga told him, about forgiveness, and Gaga taught him about the frailties of humans and the disappointments that he would experience in himself and in others, and the best way to get up and dust off your britches and keep going. And he said that was the part that Gaga played.
Yep.
And then she would cook a good warm meal, and he said there was times that I said everything's gonna be okay because Gaga was there for me. And then he had a grandfather that was on his mama's side, and he said that he was pretty much his constant as far as faith and what a man, what a gentleman was. And so he learned from him, and that goes back to when Mama prayed when he sang that song. It just meant so much to him because he remembered Mama praying and going to church by herself and hoping Daddy would show up eventually. Don't you think that he wanted music in the house, right? he loved music, right?
Yeah.
And I think that his daddy, it seemed like, from what I know, of course I wasn't there back then, but it seemed like his daddy put a horse under their backside and an instrument in their hands long before he knew that there might be a talent. He gave them a guitar or an instrument and said, "You will all play an instrument." And none of them really sang. So Daddy got to the point where he said, "Okay, somebody in this house is going to sing." Daddy loved to sing, but he cut an album or two early on. Not an album, but a song or two, right?
Yeah.
And but nobody else was singing, and he told Miss Kate Mangrum when he sent he and Ricky to lessons, both for guitar lessons, Randy 9, Ricky 10, and he said, "One of you is going to sing." And neither one of them wanted to sing, they just wanted to play the guitar. So by default, since he was younger, he had to start singing, and he opened his mouth, and Miss Kate said, "We've got something special here." So at that point in time, I think they all thought, wow, this is the aha moment.
Yep.
So that's where it started under duress, I think.
Yeah.
And I think Randy, he always said, "I'm so glad that Daddy did that." You know, he and Daddy butted heads a lot over things. And like I said earlier, Mama was kind of the softer side of the home. And so she was in the middle of it all the time and kept everything kind of held together. But he's always said, "I was so glad that Daddy forced me to sing and play the guitar." He said, "Because that's where I found my way out." He and Ricky started playing in fiddlers conventions and VFW's local places, and started winning ribbons. And back here behind us, you'll see hanging some of these yellow ribbons. And I think out of all of his trophies and accolades, I enjoy looking back at those honorable mentions one year, and then the next year it would be most improved, and then the next year it was best all around type thing. And when you look at those ribbons, you think, gosh, that was the beginning of something so great. And sometimes I tear up when I look at those, because I think I wished I could have been there to see those moments. And that's when Randy said that he started figuring out that maybe there's something here, maybe I have something unique, and maybe I have something that I can offer the world outside of these city limits of Marshville. Though he loved Marshville and the people there, he knew that he needed to get out. I think that strength of character that he got growing up on the farm in Marshville under the circumstances that he grew up, and they built so much character in him, and that desire to give up was never in the book. I mean, he never got discouraged. He loved what he was doing. You know, Nashville was an exciting time for him, and he worked there at the Nashville Palace. So John A. owned Nashville Palace at that time, and I think he does again now, which is kind of full circle. And so he gave Randy a job cooking and cleaning and bussing tables, and he did the plumbing, and he did landscape, and he did construction work. He did a little bit of everything just to make ends meet, and he stood at the door and he knocked. And he was ever so patient while he stood there and he knocked, and he did what he had to do to finally get his songs heard. God answered the door eventually, but it was the testing time, and those are always good for us. And country music had kind of gone the way of urban cowboy, more pop. His love for music obviously came from his dad, and they loved the old traditional country music. Hank Williams Sr., Vern Gosdin, and George Jones. That old country music is what he loved so much. And that's what he was determined stick to bring back, to, you know, he wasn't going to, and then of course he's like so many of them that go to Nashville, they kind of get tilted towards whatever radio's playing or whatever the label says they need to be doing, and they tried to do that with Randy, and he's like, no, I'm traditional country music, and I can't be anything else but that. And so he stuck to those guns, and again, thank goodness for that, because not only did he get his songs heard, but like Garth says, he kicked the door open, and you know, he nailed it to the floor for us. He said, because there was a lot of them out there singing traditional country, but nobody was hearing them. And he said then when Randy came along, and 1982 came out and hit #1, and then soon thereafter Warner re-released On the Other Hand, and that went #1. Then people started going, oh, that's country music. If you just go and talk to some of the other guys, they'll tell you. Dwight Yoakam, we just saw him last week, this past weekend, and he said the same thing. He said, man, it's such an honor to be, you know, with you this many years down the road, and thank you for doing what you did. And you know, I think that's so gratifying when we're at this place in our life, and you're kind of standing on the distant shores and looking back and recognizing the ripples that you made. And it's nice when we get around some of his friends and his fellow country artists, and they tell us that. You know, it's always nice when you find that you're not alone. And he found out that people loved his songs, and the more he heard that it touched somebody, the more inclined he was to sing a new song, write a new song. So I think that's why now, as we look back in retrospect, we have such a beautiful catalog of Randy Travis music, straight from the heart. God worked, you know, some wonderful things in Randy's heart at that time, so it didn't come easy for him. It was in the early 90s. They were living in Ashland City, Tennessee, and they were going to a church there in Ashland City. I think it was Church of Christ. Was it Pastor Harless that was there? And he knew that was something he needed to profess, to try to leave some of the old stuff behind. And he went in, and Pastor Harless baptized him that Sunday night, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. So once he made up his mind, he knew that that's the direction he wanted to go. He had done an album called Rise and Shine, and he and Kyle had finished Rise and Shine. They'd finished the album, and Kyle was mixing it. Somebody, and I wished I could remember the name, they gave Kyle this song and said, this is for Randy's voice. This song needs to be sung by Randy. And Kyle said, are you sure? It's a great song. And the guy said, no, it's Randy. It's Randy's voice. Here's another angel that comes along in your life. And unselfishly gave that song to Kyle to give to Randy. Randy took it with him, and he was, I think you were on the treadmill or the bike or something, and he had his headphones on. He was listening to it. He said, I listened to it 2 or 3 times, got off the treadmill or bike, and called Kyle, and he said, we're going back in the studio. We're putting this on the album. Kyle's like, we just finished, Hoss, we already finished this album, you know. He said, no, this is going on this album. So that was why it was the last track on Rise and Shine. And it worked out for everybody, I think. It was what a song, and it crossed all the genres, and it brought a lot of people together. It wasn't just country, it wasn't just gospel, it spoke to everybody. Everybody could relate to that.
There are 3 wooden crosses on the right side of the highway. Why there's not 4 of them, now I guess we know. It's not what you take when you leave this world behind you. what you leave behind you when you go. There are 3 wooden crosses on the right side of the highway.
It did touch a lot of lives. I believe it was, I've read, it was a Reverend Coffindaffer, if you can believe that. Reverend Coffindaffer was the one that started putting crosses on the side of the road for people, memorials. And so we have 3 wooden crosses here in the front entryway, and they were carved out of a triple trunk cedar tree by a gentleman that lives a little bit west of us. And he had lost his daughter to, I believe it was a drunk driver from what I understand. And it was a traffic accident. And he kind of went quiet, he went dormant. He didn't know how to understand or how to deal with that kind of pain. And so he, at one point, found this tree, and like I said, it had a triple trunk. And he spent a lot of time out on his land by himself after his daughter's passing and started making these crosses. So once he found this triple trunk, it was kind of his mission, from what I understand, to find Randy, to make sure that he got the 3 wooden crosses in memory of his daughter. So, and he has Randy's initials carved in the side, and it's just, it's a constant reminder to me, and I think you too, every time we look at it, of how truly blessed we are.
We'll be right back with more of our interview with Randy and Mary Travis after this brief message about a beautiful new edition of Jesus Calling.
Share His love. Share His inspiration. Share His strength. Share His joy. Share the peace found in His presence. Jesus Calling.
Randy's life and music has had an impact on millions. The strength he showed in his career and the faith that inspired him would be something that he would draw from as he and Mary faced one of the most challenging experiences of their lives, a devastating stroke that almost took Randy's life.
We made a good team going through it. It's one of those things I've told people. I said, it's a crash course. It's not anything that you are ever prepared for. It doesn't matter how many years of school you have. You can never prepare for a calamity like that. And it happened overnight. As far as we knew, there was things going on with the heart, with the viral cardiomyopathy that Dr. Mack had, of course, educated us on after the fact, that had been going on probably for 4 or 5 weeks, but we didn't know that was going on. And by the time we got to the hospital, the heart was shutting down, and it had done its damage. The viral cardiomyopathy had done its damage, and that's what had filled the lungs up. They thought he had pneumonia, and so they sent us home thinking we had pneumonia and treating walk-in pneumonia the first night. The second night we went back, and both lungs were completely congested, and they couldn't even give him forced air. So that's when he flatlined, and it was all within 24 hours that we went from packing a bus to go on the Canada tour to being in the hospital for almost 6 months. So it was overnight, and it was rapid fire. So, you know, at that point in time, he's such a strong human being. Physically, he was strong. The day before all of this happened, he was out in the gym 3 hours. He was very physically fit, and I think that was one of the things that helped him get through it. If he had not been in that good a shape, I don't know that he would have survived it. The doctors didn't think he would survive it. He got down to right below 100 pounds. You know, he was on feeding tubes, he was on IVs, he had 2 brain surgeries, he had several tracheotomies, he was intubated, he was on ECMO, which is life support. Then when you think you're out of the woods, then he had the 3 hospital-borne bacterias, and that's when they said there's nothing else we can do for him, and he's not making any improvements. And the staph infection is we can't get on top of it, and it's just replicating at a high rate of speed. And so they took me into a room with, I think there was like 9 doctors and interns and nurses, and some other people that were there with us. And they said, it's a hard decision, but you just need to think maybe of letting him go. And I remembered being angry first. Of course sad, but very angry, because I thought that they had given up, and it was pretty obvious in the kind of care that they were giving, they'd given up. It was like we were still in the inside room with no windows, no sunshine, no anything. And I asked one of the nurses, I said, why after 9 days, 11 days, why are we still in this room that doesn't have a window, that doesn't have sunlight? And her response to me was, that's where we put people that we don't think will survive. Basically, those are where, you know, we just kind of put you there and wait. And I thought, that's not who we're dealing with. I mean, you've got a fighter in there. Anyway, I left the room after they told me to pull the plug. And I went into the room, and I just sat down and talked to him. And I said, honey, if you want to keep fighting this fight, I said, let me know. I said, I need to know. And it was the sweetest. It was a moment I'll take to my grave. I was holding this hand, because of course that one was paralyzed. I was holding his hand, and he squeezed it. And I just will never forget this sweet, sweet tear and I knew that he wanted to keep fighting. At this point, he was comatose, you know, but he knew what was going on. He knew exactly what was going on. And I knew then that he wasn't ready to give up. So, you know, I was kind of like a mama bear at this point in time. I told him, I said, we're going to give it all we've got, and I'm watching every move y'all make. You just got to give this guy a chance. God wasn't through with Randy. He wasn't through with what Randy could do in this world and the difference that he could make in lives. I knew I was fighting for someone and battling for someone that meant so much to me. I mean, besides my Kavanaugh and Raleigh, my kids, this man here, I mean, and we were fighting this fight together, and I was more vocal, he was quiet, but we were fighting it together, weren't we? Yeah. And, you know, when they'd come in and told me that they needed to do a heart transplant, and I thought, you haven't even given the heart a chance. You haven't, you know, we're not just going to go in and do a heart transplant. So, you know, give it a chance. Give God time to work. And I did. I spent a lot of time praying. You know, we prayed together. He probably doesn't remember a lot of it, but a lot of it he probably does. I'm a firm believer that if people say people in comas don't understand or don't hear, I will challenge anybody that ever believes that they don't. I know that they do. I know that they understand what's going on. So it's very important to be positive and to only bring uplifting and positive things into a room that somebody is struggling. I did a lot of praying, and this Jesus Calling, it was so interesting to me because I remembered my brother Stubbs that made the shirts that Randy wore. He and his wife gave me a copy. He and Holly gave me a copy of Jesus Calling. Denise and George and Luke. Luke's our godson, and Luke and Kennedy, they brought us Jesus Calling. It was, I think within the first week of being there, I had 6 Jesus Callings. Everybody that came brought a Jesus Calling. This is I think the one that George and Denise and Luke gave us. Then I had the leather bound. It came in all shapes and sizes. I know at the heart hospital there was people that would come in, of course, with heart attacks and triple bypasses, and they didn't know if they were going to live. So, yeah, I shared 4 or 5 of my Jesus Callings with people, but it was just one of those things that it helped me get through those times because I could turn to any page in there and read something that gave me some strength and helped me to understand that what we were going through, we weren't alone. It says, as you look at the day before you, you see a twisted, complicated path with branches going off in all directions. You wonder how you can possibly find your way through the maze. Then you remember the one who is with you always, holding you by your right hand. You recall my promise to guide you with my counsel, and you begin to relax. As you look again at the path ahead, you notice that a peaceful fog has settled over it, obscuring your view. You can only see a few steps in front of you, so you turn your attention more fully to me and to begin to enjoy my presence. The fog is a protection for you, calling you back into the present moment. Although I inhabit all of space and time, you can communicate with me only here and now. Someday the fog will no longer be necessary, for you will have learned to keep your focus on me and on the path just ahead of you. That one was November the 16th, so we leaned hard on him. We leaned real hard on God, and I know I spent a lot of nights over in my little hospital cot or chair or whatever was there and talking to God and saying prayers. And, you know, there was a newness in me as far as my faith. And I always asked him, I said, God, just please give him back to me. I don't care what way, shape, or form, just please let me have him back. Yeah, those were some tough times, but Dr. Toll told me, he said, I'm going to make some changes and some antibiotics and some medications. We can't leave him there long because they'll do more damage than good. But if we can start seeing some improvement, then maybe there's hope. And sure enough, Dr. Toll, he jumped on board, and it was some strong antibiotics too. And at this time we were in isolation because he was so septic and the staph infection. So everything, we were in isolation. Everybody had to glove up, and so. But Dr. Toll, after about 6 days, he came and he said, Mary, I think we're making a turnaround. He said the staph is starting to go the right direction. And that was music to my ears. You know, so we were there for another week or so, a couple of weeks, I guess. And I just told him, I said, as soon as you can get him stable, I need to get him back to Texas, back to the heart hospital. They were faithful at the heart hospital. They did everything. The doctors would pray before they did surgeries. The nurses would come in and pray late at night, and you could just feel that, you know, that gift of hope. So we got back to Texas, and then we spent some time at Heart Hospital, and finally got out of isolation, and then went to Baylor. And after that had gotten to a point of healing, then it was right before Thanksgiving, 2013, and we were leaving Baylor Rehab in Dallas.
Yeah.
And it was a quiet morning, but they had made sure that I knew how to get him in and out of the vehicle and in and out of the chair, and I could lift him and get him in and out of bed. And so we'd pretty much passed all the tests, and we were going through the little lobby there at Baylor Rehab. And he was in his wheelchair and had a little sack of clothes on his lap, and I remembered he took his left hand, he goes, woo! He was so happy to get, that we were going to be coming home. It was time. It's only by the grace of God and his tender mercy that he said, I'm going to hold you in my hands. I'm gonna, make the clouds your pillows. I'm gonna do everything I can, to his part. I need you to do your part, and that's just fight. And that's what Randy Travis did. Every day, I'm so grateful for that unspoken, relationship that we have. I mean, I can tell him all day how much he means to me, but he can't tell me that. And I think early on that frustrated him a little bit, didn't it? You would get a little upset, when it came to holidays, and because he was such a giver, and it was always something so thoughtful. And then when, after that, the stroke, then it changed, and we talked our way through that too, though. I didn't need anything but the gift of him, and I was tickled as I could be, just to, to have him to spend the rest of time with. So we worked through a lot of that. There was times when I think you were pretty down, weren't you, for a while. But since then, I think we've kind of adjusted to our new life, and we're okay with that. You learn to laugh. I think that's one of the things that every day we try to find something to laugh at, or us. We'll laugh at ourselves more than anything, right? But we do. We find something to laugh about, and I think the great thing about love is that you know the worst about each other, but you only see the best. You forgive. You keep God in the middle of all of it, because there's days when you don't understand each other. There's tough days. There's still tough days, but we go to bed and smile, and we wake up and we smile, and you forgive, you forget, you go on. There's life is still good.
Randy has a new book that gives deeper insight into his story called Forever and Ever Amen, a memoir of music, faith, and braving the storms of life. It's available wherever you buy books. Next time on Jesus Calling Stories of Faith, we speak with country music singer, writer, and producer Jay DeMarcus, who is a member of country pop group Rascal Flatts. Jay's journey to the big stage was an unexpected one. He reflects on his struggles and successes in his new memoir, Shotgun Angels.
When I look back over the things that had happened that were miraculous sometimes, even improbable, it started to dawn on me that I needed to tell my story for other people who might have been just like me, who don't know where to start, who are lost, who struggle, who have dreams but don't know how to start chasing them. And I think that as long as you keep your ears and your eyes and your heart open, you also can recognize those moments, those God moments, when He's nudging you in the direction you should go.
Thank you for watching Jesus Calling Stories of Faith. To learn more about how to keep up with our shows bi-monthly and to listen to our weekly podcast, please visit youtube.com/JesusCallingBook to view and hear previous episodes, and to watch a short informational video about how to access all things Jesus Calling on audio and video formats. Plus, learn how to subscribe to our podcast and video channels. Your subscription helps get the word out to more people who will benefit from these inspirational stories of faith.